Hi, everyone. We're just going to wait a couple minutes to see if any more folks join us before we get started, sort of on Kenyon time.
If anyone would like to chat, they should feel free.
You know, I'd forgotten what Kenyon time was until like just now. It's like, oh yeah, we started classes at 10 of the hour.
I'm curious, where are folks tuning in from?
Hi, everyone. I'll just say who I am. I'm Annie Gordon from the Alumni office. I'm listening in because I have great interest in this international alumni connection. I'm eating my lunch because I have back-to-back meetings, so that's why I had my camera off. But I'm really excited for all of you to be here. I recognize some names of some people that I have been corresponding with about international alumni connections and international students and international alumni. So I think this is a great beginning step to what I hope will be some really good engagement. So I'm interested to hear who everybody is and where you're from and where you currently are and how you want to be connected to college.
Busola, since this was originally your suggestion, your wonderful suggestion, do you want to introduce yourself just briefly before I know we were going to do things in a different order, but just to say hello.
No problem. Hi, everyone. I'm Busola. I graduated from class of 15. I am currently living in Boston, getting a PhD in neuroscience, which was a lot of like Kenyon connections to get here. And I guess for me, I've always felt like Kenyon was my first home in the US. And moving from a small liberal arts college to a really large institution, I realized a lot of things that Kenyon made possible aren't really possible in other places because it's too large and there's a lot of like red tapeism and bureaucracy. And so I wanted, you know, as an international to kind of like cherish those like moments I got from Kenyon, like these connections. And one thing I've always been, well, as a Kenyan, one thing I struggled with was, you know, when internationals graduate, where do they go? You know, what do they do and how do we stay connected to them? And, you know, in reunion, it's kind of hard to coordinate because I think a lot of my friends were in different classes. So I think in my class, we were maybe about 12 or 13. And so that's like a small number, but a lot of my friends were about like 50 or 60, spanning like 4 classes while I was at Kenyon. So having this space to kind of reconnect during reunion weekends, you know, virtually if we can't make it, I think is like a great idea and a step in the right direction.
Well, that actually leads really well into a video we have. So Marn, the director of the Center for Global Engagement, could not be with us today, but she wanted to try anyway. So give me just a moment. That's the one. Oh no. Couldn't share.
Hi, international students who were at Kenyon. It's Marn, and I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today. Doing things with my other daughter, Marisol. But I wanted to drop in and say hi and just sort of give you an update on where things are at. So if you've been at Kenyon since 2003, you know who I am. I'm Marn Osick. I'm the director of the Center for Global Engagement. Prior to 2003, you probably knew Barbara Hamlet. And she has been retired for, probably about 15 years now. Let's see what else. Things that are new at Kenyon. So about 10 years ago, we moved from Allen House into Hohenserich House. I'm upstairs in my office, but downstairs we have a really beautiful kitchen, a seminar room. It's where we do some things for international student orientation. So we've got a new place. We've got new faces, Sam Turner, who's going to be with you when you actually see this, and Rebecca Eckert, both Kenyon alumna. They are in our office. Patty Maiorino has retired, but she's back in our office to help us out. Lisa is at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and Megan has moved on down the road to Denison. So we've got a lot of new faces. Speaking of new faces, I think the biggest new thing is just the number of new international students that we welcome every year. So when I first started at Kenyon, we had a total of all 4 classes of 38 students. Our incoming class this year, we're going to have 88 international students arriving at Kenyon. So that's just the incoming class. That'll leave us with, I think, about 230 international students total. So we've grown a lot, which we're really excited about. Yeah, I think those are the big things that are new. We miss you all. If you're back on campus, please come say hi. If you just want to say hi in an email or Facebook or Instagram or whatever, please do so. Know that we miss you. Know that I miss you. And have a great day. Have a great reunion. Bye.
I guess following that, I will just jump in to say hi. So my name is Rebecca Marn. I'm one of the people that Marn mentioned in her video. I'm a 2007 alum, and I've been working in international education in different ways since I graduated from Kenyon, but I came back in August 2019 to work as a staff person. And I've really enjoyed being back on the Hill. I still feel like it's very special anytime I'm just walking up and down Middle Path, especially once I get down near Ascension, which is where I had a lot of classes as a student. So it's really wonderful to be back here and to get to work with our current international students. And I'm just so excited that there are alumni who are interested in connecting. I think that a lot of questions that we're getting from current students right now, you know, they're really curious about, okay, what can I do after I graduate? You know, if I'm wanting to work in the US or if I want to go on to grad school, like, how does that work for me? And I think that interest is just growing and growing as our numbers grow. So I'm really interested in getting to know more international alumni of Kenyon, just to kind of see, you know, what have folks done after they've graduated, and what are your interests in connecting with the college. So thank you all for being here, and it's great to meet you.
I am one of the other people that Marn mentioned. I'm Sam Turner, class of 2010. I too am back working for Kenyon. I am the program coordinator. So I work with Rebecca on things like the host family program for international students and PRIO. We've done a number of PRIOs together just in the last 2 years. And I also work with off-campus study. And right now, as Megan said, or as Marn said, Megan has moved on. We are in the process of hiring a new OCS person. So I'm doing a lot more OCS than international at the moment, but I'm looking forward to getting back into working with my international students.
Well, I'll jump in and say hi. I'm Wendy Singer. I'm in the history department, and I have think of myself as a friend of the Center for Global Engagement. And so sometimes I help out with orientation. My field is I teach the history of India, and I have been both an international student and an international teacher over time. And so I feel very close to our global community. And we've been starting to have some international events too. We had an alumni event in China last year, just before the pandemic. And we've had a couple of alumni events in India. So whenever I'm somewhere, I'm more than happy to be part of any alumni activities.
So I'm just curious if any of the other folks on the call want to just introduce yourself. And if you can't talk, like, feel free to put that in the chat. I'm just curious as to where folks are and what your time frame at Kenyon was.
Hi, I'm hiding myself because I've got a loud little baby. But he says hi. We're in France, and I'm actually not an international student, but I'm joining because I'm part of the international Kenyon alumna crew in general, and we are hoping to get more events going in Europe, even if they're virtual during COVID. So thank you for inviting me. And this is Philippe, and maybe he'll be a future Kenyonite someday. So nice to see everybody.
Thank you.
And for anyone participating in the reunion bingo, I believe there is a square for a baby being present on the screen. So you can mark that square off right now.
Oh, good.
But you still have time. You have until the end of the day today. Do it.
Oh,
that's great.
And I think Alessandra says she's in class. So hi, Alessandra.
And if I'm remembering correctly, Alessandra's class of 05. 06. Oh, I was so close. So close.
Oh, and living in Peru. Cool. Yeah. Oh, right. That makes sense. I should say to Hillary that I am also the parent of a Kenyon alumnus whose name is Aaron Lynn, and he is leaving at the end of June and moving to London.
You're Aaron's mom.
I am Aaron's mom. I was going to ask you if you knew him.
Yeah, he was super cool.
Thanks.
That's what I remember.
There's a big London.
Moving to London, so if you're doing things in Europe.
Yeah, we're trying to do Paris/London. We've got, and Annie's been great. We've got like a whole email chain going, and all these people have just sort of been interrupted with COVID. But I'm happy if you want to connect him with me. I can message you my email, and then I can introduce him to all the London people, because I know about 5 people there, and I'm sure there's more.
Yeah, the London crew is really Jody Ann from last year. She's living in London. We also have another alumni on Alumni Council, Raja, I believe is her first name. She's in London as well. And like Hillary said, yeah.
Richa Jha.
Yeah, yes. And Hillary and I have been corresponding about, we were on the cusp of trying to do something last spring. And of course that fell apart. So I think, you know, as things start to feel a little freer in the next year, we might try to do something in person or get some people together. So.
And that was one of the things that Busola and I talked about when she brought up the idea of having a program to reconnect folks who had attended Kenyon as international students. We talked about the fact that there are things germane to that group, but there are also things related to folks who are living abroad currently who may have attended as domestic students that really kind of overlap. And a lot of those conversations and experiences are probably in some ways very similar because all of you have been living at some point as expats out of your home country. So I think that's a really neat connection to be able to forge, especially as everyone navigates, you know, difficult times with international moves and all of the things, whether during COVID or beyond.
It is worth mentioning, Hillary, you would have interest in this, I think, is that, so there's, for the class of 2025, the college had really good yield, record-breaking yield. And so one of the things they're offering for incoming freshmen is a chance to study abroad in Copenhagen. And it sounds like quite a few students have taken that opportunity. And so I don't know what the numbers, final numbers will shake out, but it's already encouraging to hear students that are going to be heading to Europe, and we'll start to explore different areas. And I think as a freshman, having that experience is just awesome to be able to study abroad. You're right out the gate is really unique. So those will be some people that we'll be interested in talking to as students as well to figure out, you know, how that shapes their alumni experience too.
So this will be like their freshman year, they will study abroad?
Yeah, so I'm working on this program.
Oh yeah, Sam would know more about this than anybody.
Not as much as Marn, but I can tell you a little bit about it. So it's going to be first semester of their freshman year. And it's going to be a very strong cohort of people. There has been a lot of interest in it. So we're still, the numbers are still shaking out right now. But it will be a cohort of Kenyon first year students that will have their own little orientation. And then some of us will go with them to Denmark to get them settled in. For those who did off-campus study, you might have heard about our DIS program, which is study in Scandinavia. So we have a lot of students who go to DIS either in Copenhagen or Sweden, in Stockholm. And we're specifically looking, our students will just be in Copenhagen and Denmark, but they will have the ability to travel around the country. As Kenyon has done a lot, well, in the last couple of years, our office has tried to do a lot with new international students of, here is your home, here's Kenyon, here's Gambier, here's Mount Vernon, here's Ohio, here's the US, sort of where is your place here? We're looking at doing something very similar in Denmark. So you are Kenyon when you go, you are still a part of Kenyon. You are this Kenyon contingent in Copenhagen. Copenhagen is a city, very different from Gambier, right? We all know it's very different from Gambier. But they're going to have the ability to go out into rural Denmark and see what it's like there before they come back to Gambier, and can sort of compare and contrast those, which will be really interesting. Like the Kenyon Exeter and Kenyon Rome programs, this is being led by Kenyon faculty. Sergey Lobanov-Rostovsky and Sarah Height are currently our resident directors, which is very exciting. So they're each going to teach a section of English 103. For those of you who might have come in as English majors, you may remember that it was difficult sometimes to get into 103. So a benefit for these students is they will have the chance to get into a very traditional, very exciting first year Kenyon English course. All students will take DIS's Danish language and culture course. And they'll actually be taking it with students from the off-campus study students. So some of them might have classes with our juniors who are going to Copenhagen as well. Or they might take it with a student from another US school. And then they will have 3 sort of elective courses that are traditionally DIS courses for juniors that are being reimagined for first years, what an introduction to this particular genre would be. it's very, very exciting. We're really looking forward to it. And Sarah and Sergey are going to be a great first introduction to Kenyon for these students.
I'll also just add that Marn had shared with me that there are some international students who are also interested in this program. So we may very well have international students who go on that program and then come back to Kenyon. So that's really exciting for us just to know that our students have this option for next year.
I'm really curious about what the representation of the class is. So with like 88 is a really large number. How does it shake out when you look at like countries represented or regions represented?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I will say a little bit more about the 88. So with this past year, you know, there were just so many issues with international travel. We had some segment of the students who would have been in the class of 2024 who just couldn't get to campus last year. Some of them decided to completely defer their admission for a year. There were some who studied remotely for one or both semesters this past year. So of the 88, I want to say just over 60 of them are actually students who are class of 2025, and the others are folks who either deferred or started studying with Kenyon remotely this year. So it's a little bit bigger than what we would normally get, but over the last few years, our incoming classes of international students have been increasing. Like in the upper 50s or 60s is pretty typical for us now. And when I was a student at Kenyon, which is feeling more and more like it was a long time ago, I would say that there were maybe 50 international students total when I was on campus, and now that's, you know, less than a typical incoming class year. In terms of country distribution, it's very broad. Actually, Sam and I, just yesterday, we were organizing the flags in the CGE, getting the flags that we used for commencement put away, but trying to figure out, okay, which flags are we going to need in the fall when we get flags ready for convocation? And I think that we came up with about 35 different countries that we were going to need flags for. So we're still seeing a very broad distribution. We certainly have some countries that are a little bit more represented on campus, but you know, still very broad geographic diversity, which is great.
And is Kenyon continuing the Fulbright language TA program?
Yes, we have been approved for next year to have 3 of them on campus, for Chinese, Arabic, and I'm blanking on what the third one is. Oh, Russian, yes. We are not sure who is going to be able to get to campus yet. China, thankfully, the embassies have opened up there, and we're actually seeing international students get their visas processed very quickly right now. But so I'm hopeful that the Chinese FLTA will be able to get here. I am not sure about Russia or the Arabic.
This year,
FLTA yet.
The only FLTA who was able to make it to campus was our Arabic FLTA, and she couldn't even make it until second semester. But I believe our Russian and Chinese were working remotely, though. Is that right?
Yes.
But I would say, like, even having an average of 50, 60 internationals in a class, like, I remember it was such a big deal my senior year because the incoming class was about 30 or 35. And we were like, that's such a big number. And so now that's really encouraging and so amazing to hear.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just in the time that I've been here, and with the pandemic, I haven't been through a full regular academic year yet as a staff person, but I feel like I've really observed the older students really eager to help the new students and kind of welcome them into their community. I don't know if this was a tradition when you all were here, but in the last few years, the CGE has done kind of a picnic at the beginning of the year after PRIO that we invite all of the upper class students who are on campus to come to. And they are just so eager to get there and meet the new students. So even though our numbers are growing, I feel like I still see kind of that close-knit community, and older students are really excited when the first years get to campus.
That's been one of the hardest things to try to organize for PRIO, is convincing the older students that they have to wait till the end of the week so that we can get the first years sort of connected and bonding as a group, and that they can't all accost them as soon as they get on campus, which is a great problem to have.
I think Alessandra, my class is also about 12, to respond to that. Well, one thing I was hoping to have a current international student who is on campus speak on is whether the tradition of the Kenyon International Party, like the International Formal, is still going on, because that was such a big deal. And also having the ISAC, International Students of Kenyon, and whether that the CGE still does the Global Engagement Week, and if there's still a fashion show. These are not important questions in the grand scheme of things, but to get a sense for what the, I guess, international community is being able to build, especially as they're growing so much.
Sure. Yeah, I had reached out to a couple of students who are just really stellar, and one of them has started an internship with eBay, so he is busy today. And the other student, she is also working right now too. So apologies that we couldn't find someone, but I can address those questions somewhat. I think I've been the advisor for ISAC since I came back to Kenyon. They have still been doing the formal. I'm not sure if they did one this year, just because this year was, in-person things were very limited. Oh, go ahead.
Class of 2020 did hold one though for everyone, their senior year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this year it had to be canceled because we couldn't have, because of COVID rules.
Yeah. And yes, we are still hosting Global Engagement Week. That was one of the first projects that I got on when I started back here as a staff person. This year we did a virtual Global Engagement Week. We had a couple of in-person things for folks on campus that were very much sort of grab and go. We also, the last couple of years at least, have been working with AVI, which is our food service provider, to have some international menu items in the cafeteria during that week. We got recipe ideas from students, and then AVI put those out during that week. So yes, I think that some of those traditions are going on. I'm definitely learning more about those traditions, but I think the scale is just growing. We also are doing things like Lunar New Year and Mid-Autumn celebrations, in collaboration with Modern Languages and the Chinese Student Association. Yeah, I would say our students are very, very active on campus.
That's super amazing. I guess one other question I'd have, and maybe this is more for you, Annie, and maybe a little bit for you, Wendy, how do you remain in touch or keep in touch with international students who've graduated, alumni, especially when you're planning these reunions, or I guess moving forward, how do you envision just having, sustaining this connection?
Wendy, go ahead if you have. I saw you started to unmute yourself there.
I keep muting because when the mower gets close, I try to mute. WhatsApp. I use WhatsApp to keep in touch with people. I think that it's still, this is Kenyon, right? And one of the ways that Kenyon excels is in communication with faculty. So my former students and their friends, and if I know I'm going to a country, I call over to Kim or Annie, and I get a list of who's in that country, and then I meet people. So I was in Leiden and I met someone in The Hague. So, right now, I think we're doing it informally through those means of communication that have always been characteristic of Kenyon. What pleased me, and the reason that I jumped at coming on this call, is this sense that there's a concerted effort now to organize international students and students abroad. And that's really important because if we have 60 international students in a class, all of those students are going to be seniors looking for jobs. And many of them want jobs not in the United States. They want jobs somewhere else. And I find myself writing letters of recommendation for international firms all over the world. And we need to get better at finding those international job opportunities and finding international fellowship opportunities and all of those things. So building the network is really important for the current students as well. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and any suggestions you have that we can all work together to, create a more robust international network to match. There's a great network of students of color in the United States, and I see that as a model that I'd like to extend to the world, so that when somebody's getting ready to go somewhere, we have contacts. One of my seniors, Patricia Koskai, is going back to Kenya, which is where she's from, and she has a great job working for an organization called the 1 Acre organization that helps small farmers. And she said, and she had an internship there. So she said, oh, well, if we have a student who's graduating and wants to take an internship there, she can help make that happen. So I think that using that network is really important.
I'm really curious to get a follow-up to what you're saying. How active is the CDO in helping to set up or maintain these connections, if at all?
So interestingly, right now, the CDO has 3 positions that they're hiring for. One is an employer relations or a director of employer relations position. So I think a lot of what Wendy's talking about is using our alumni network to find those opportunities for current students and for alums that are looking for positions, and especially supporting our young alumni because they also need that type of support. So so that person will work closely with our office to recruit for jobs, to find alumni employers, to go beyond the alumni network, of course, but our kind of easy entryway into a lot of these things is through the people who have been connected to Kenyon in a very deep way as alums. So, and we'll utilize parents for that same thing. So Wendy's absolutely right. To dismiss or to not think about our international alumni that are currently living abroad and those who come from other countries and maybe staying in the United States and customizing alumni programming that supports them in their interests. That would be a huge oversight on our part. So we're incredibly interested in it. I felt like we had a lot of energy going into 2020 around this. Hillary is a great example. She and I were working really closely on a lot of things, and there was a trip to China that Wendy went with Sean Daly on, and so there was a lot of good things in the international arena that I thought we were on the cusp of some really good stuff, and then it just kind of paused for a while. But now I think for me, this opportunity today, as small as it is, I think this is a really good discussion that launches us into making sure that this is going to be part of our programming for the next academic year. So, I wouldn't just wait for reunion. And Bosala, I would say too, if you have some ideas for you as an international student who's living domestically, what appeals to you and what brings you, what sparks your interest in people who are like you, what would spark their interest? We are interested in that. But for anybody who's living abroad, and Alessandra especially, I know we have, I think his name is Gabriel Algra. Algara is his last name, class of 93. Yes, he's been asking me for years now to organize a trip to Peru, and he does this Peruvian music, and he's very interested in that. And so, there's just so many angles to take this. And I think the one thing that the alumni office has really tried to do, especially since my arrival, is to not force programming on the alumni that don't want it. We want you to tell us what you want, right? Like this is your experience, not my experience. So for me, that's what this conversation is about, is getting those ideas from you, helping us to kind of customize what we're going to do in the future, and know that we're incredibly invested in it at this point in time. So yeah.
And I'll add too, to echo Annie's sentiments. When I only recently joined the alumni and parent engagement team in 2020, and what part of the role that I took was sort of reimagined to not just look at affinity programming, but also identity programming. So looking at not just I did X at Kenyon, but part of my identity is I'm an international student. Part of my identity is I'm a person of color. Part of my identity is my gender identity, those sorts of things, because I think those are often the programs that people are most excited about and are hardest to pin down, because what everybody is going to want is going to be a little bit different. So like Annie said, we really welcome feedback and perspective when we're hitting the mark or when we're not, because I think that's something that we're really attuned to, that for a lot of identity programming, it's just going to be different for everybody. So we really would love to hear your ideas and your feedback.
So yeah, and I wanted to add back on the, I wanted to add back on the CDO. They gave me a list from the international network they started to develop. And if you wanted to help me with that, I could share that list with you. And I just haven't had time. This has been a very tough semester for all of us. And so, so I got this list in March and I really haven't done anything with it. But we could reinvigorate this network that had already gotten started. And it just needs more people to monitor and help and respond. And if you and I started a conversation, that might bring more people in. And Richa, do you know Richa Jha? She's on Alumni Council and she lives in London. She's much older than you, but her younger sister, whose name is Archita Jha, who's also older than you, but they both live in London, and I know that they would help as well. So I think that if we got a network going again and started a conversation about something, that other people would chime in.
Yeah, I think that, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I was so excited to get in on this call because, and as I wrote back, I said, this is my dream, that there would be a call of people from interested in invigorating an international network.
Yeah, I was talking to Kim about this because I realized that the students of color were having a mixer and the Christian students were having a mixer, and I was like, where's the international student mixer? And then part of that conversation actually started my senior year with the alumni office asking, is there a record of all the international students? Because we have these, I think these records of students who remain domestic, kind of like where they go, what jobs they have, if they want to volunteer with the CDO. But I feel like more internationals kind of like go off and don't really kind of have a way to remain in touch or feel like they are invited to remain in touch, or maybe just don't know how to remain in touch if they wanted to. So I think when I asked that initial question, I was wondering if there was a list that we could start working on, even if it's just to like have the names of all the internationals in the past, I don't know, 10 years. And then, if we have them on WhatsApp, I have a lot of internationals on WhatsApp or Facebook, to go and be like, yo, hey, this is what's going on. Like I have, like we had an ISAC like Facebook group that maybe is not active anymore, and just kind of asking, from those connections, who would like to be involved, and maybe having kind of the way we have the class agents, having like international agents across years to kind of like keep the connections going.
Yeah, and anything I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to help.
Yeah, and we're happy to help facilitate that.
Yeah, and Bosala, we can give you lists. Kim can help to pull that. And I think for me, it would be interesting to, if there was like a series of things, and the virtual world has opened up a whole new thing for us, right? Like, I mean, I know we didn't get a lot of return today, but maybe another time of day it might work. I don't know. It's really hard to figure the timing out. But I think if there were a series of topics or discussions that really appealed to international students or those living internationally now, I think those two groups have some kind of synergy but they also are unique, and I understand that too. But there might be something there that we could kick off in the fall, and I would love your thoughts on that.
Like, for something that came to me while I think Sam and Rebecca were sharing about their work in the CGE is, you know, when you have like students on campus, like, you know how like when you go abroad and you come back, you have a returning from abroad and you have a going abroad kind of like program, but there isn't really a program for international students who want to get jobs or who want to go to grad school. And so like maybe if we started off or kicked it off having like we're looking for international students who can lend their voice to these questions that current international students are facing, or like, you know, the culture shock of after you graduate from Kenyon and now you need to make real friends. You know, nobody ever talks about those things. But maybe having it set up that way so that more people can feel like, oh, I'm going to be, you know, giving back in, you know, in this way, and I want to get involved. And that'll kind of loop people in. So we have active programming. And then if we're to say, oh, these are the things coming up, or we're planning a meetup of all, you know, Chinese or all like African, like alums, and then that way we could have more like engagement.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think there might be some dynamics within certain groups where like there's certain things that appeal to them more, but I think as a baseline, really centering the topics around career, that seems to be a cross section that's probably of interest to all of those groups, and building those bonds and relationships. And we can do something like in person next reunion that's very specific for international students that can come back for reunion too. But I would say that we could probably do more on the virtual side that would make those connections a little easier for people.
Yeah.
And I'll just share from my perspective, all of that sounds wonderful and so beneficial to our current students. Just as our numbers are growing, I feel like I'm observing more interest from our current students in either doing a graduate degree in the US or getting some work experience in the US, whether that's because they want to stay here long term or they just want to get experience before they head home or to a third country. But I think that all of this would be, I think our current students would just love to have this kind of information or sort of experience sharing from alumni.
And we're doing all sorts of things that bring the world into Kenyon. So a lot of international students will take friends back home for the summer. Yeah. For Davis projects, so for projects that do development work, or I find international students from different countries meeting up either in the summer or right after graduating and traveling together. And so I think that making that network more robust would have all sorts of benefits. Also, since we had to teach a remote a little bit this year, I taught a course at 8 a.m. So again, timing I think is an issue, but I taught a course at 8 a.m. So that students in China could take that class. And in that class, I had students from China, Nepal, Iceland, Ghana, Pakistan. So we had this real international class and so our final project was to do a local research paper. And so not only were the students in lots of different places, but they brought their own narratives into the class. And we have a new visitor, Bradley.
Hey, good, I guess, morning my time, afternoon your guys' time. I'm class of 2001. And honestly, my abroad experience while at Kenyon completely set the trajectory for my career. So I was eager to at least get in on part of this meeting. I apologize for being late.
Oh, no problem at all. Yeah, we're talking about how to sustain connections between people who were international while at Kenyon or became international after leaving Kenyon, and trying to like keep how we can best like, you know, rally to help current international students, but also to be like networking between ourselves.
I have tons and tons of ideas on that, especially as we run an NGO that's been working in capacity development for emergency care, and I've been active across the African continent and throughout Southeast Asia. Yeah, I feel like Kenyan students specifically have at least the opportunity to develop a lot more of a worldly perspective. And that sounds pretty trite, but keeping people involved in projects and really decolonializing our global experiences and what we can offer to students in the future, as opposed to what most universities, including the large university where I work, which has a very colonial approach, I think is important. And I feel that both the transdisciplinarity at Kenyon, as well as the fact that Kenyon doesn't try and stake its flag in a specific country, I think is a huge asset as far as is moving towards involving students, alumni, and faculty, and building out more substantial projects potentially, and really looking potentially at impact assessment of our time abroad or about projects, ability to provide internships, et cetera, after students study abroad.
Bradley, where are you at currently?
I'm at University of Arizona. Actually, we're planning a move. We've been planning a move abroad to Australia for about 1.5 years. We were supposed to go in January, and I've had to push it back at least a year.
Right.
And where did you study abroad while you were at Kenyon?
My wife studied in Nepal in 2008, and I studied in Nepal in 2000. 2000. So through School for International Training.
Oh yeah.
That's cool. So Kenyon married. Maybe is this one of the bingo things?
That would have been a really good one. I didn't think of Kenyon couples.
Yeah, no, we totally a Kenyan couple. She was a senior, I was a sophomore, and we never necessarily would have imagined that we would have been getting married. Been together since.
So great. But I think I'm not sure what other like thoughts people wanted to share before we wrap things up. But this is just a dream come true for me, like having this conversation, having this space to start making these connections. And I think that, having the pandemic, really wreak havoc in my 5-year reunion has been a blessing, because now we can start to figure out ways to connect and make these bigger issues, start tackling them one after the other, whether it's like supporting, Kenyan students who become international, or students who are international at Kenyon who remain domestic or are too far away to really connect. And then obviously maintaining and enriching the current student body, whether that's people going to study abroad or, people coming from far away. But I think that definitely starting to think about the fall and maybe potentially fall programming, and then using the list that Wendy has and maybe Kim will also have, and collating a set of internationals who are getting a sense of what work they're doing, where they are, and getting that database up to date, kind of what the CDO does, and then maybe having a sense of whether we could do, bi-yearly, or how do you say that? semi-annual like update, like, hey, this is what's going on. These are programs we have. We would need volunteers for this, or, or starting to think with, students in different areas, we will have like a reunion at this time, or we will need someone to volunteer to like interview people or something, so that we can, those who are interested or, and available can be part of the network, but also those who don't know that they could be interested can have like an occasion to really think, how can I give back to my alma mater who gave me so much?
Yeah. I think that's great. And I just appreciate all of your time. And Bosala, I really appreciate you coming up with this idea and reaching out. It's not often that alums come to us in that way. And so when we do, we get very excited to see what happens. And I definitely think that this will grow as we start to get more and more out of this pandemic. People are feeling comfortable. So thank you for kicking it off and bringing it to our attention, because I think it's definitely worthwhile. So
I say though, we should thank Kim really, because I've been like trying to get this grant done, and so sometimes I just fell off the email thread, so this wouldn't have been possible without her.
I thank Kim daily for being on our team. So yeah.
Well, thank you all. Like everyone has said, this is just a wonderful opportunity to connect, and I think just a baby step in the right direction of probably a lot more that can be done. And so I'm really excited to see where the trajectory of this goes, because I think there are so many amazing ideas that have been discussed today. And I think I'm so glad that, Bradley, that you could join us at the end, because I think you brought in a new perspective, an additional perspective that we hadn't even chatted about yet. So I look forward to this just being the beginning of a conversation. So we have recorded this and we'll post it on our webpage for any folks who weren't able to attend. And so I'll get with you, Bosala and Wendy, and anybody else who's interested, and we can kind of talk about next steps. But at least that way, for folks who may have been interested but couldn't join today, hopefully they can catch up and get in touch with us too.
Yeah. I put my email in there, and then Global Emergency Care, and then HCW Hosted, which is another organization we started. It's one of the last points I would like to make, honestly, is I didn't come from a family with money. I somehow got into Kenyon serendipitously. So I didn't really realize the power and privilege at Kenyon until I think after I left. But I feel like the opportunity to really help students really gain perspective on the privilege they have and the responsibility that comes with that. It may be something that's covered a lot more in subtle ways and really more pervasive now, but I didn't feel like it was then. And I feel like since, like, even the last year and a half, there are 4 or 5 of us who have come together, Kenyon alum, to help build HCW Hosted, to help healthcare workers through this pandemic. And I feel like it's just really the tip of the iceberg, because my colleagues have ended up with incredible positionality around the country and around the world. And it's like, all right, why aren't we thinking about that and really planting those seeds? Yeah, much earlier. Happy to help where I can.
And I guess to Jason, who maybe didn't speak this time, feel free to share your email as well if you'd like to be part of these like ongoing conversations.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.